The wind howled across the frozen wasteland. Snow fell like knives from the dark alien sky. Nothing moved except a small shape, half buried under white powder. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Her name was Lyra, and she was barely breathing. Her skin, once smooth and silver blue, had turned pale. Her thin limbs shook with the cold. Her eyes, large and glowing, were open just enough to see the black clouds swirling above her. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. They had left her there. Her own people. She wasn't a warrior. She wasn't obedient. She had broken rules, important ones. She refused to harm the weak. And in her cold-blooded culture, mercy was weakness. So they dragged her to the edge of the Deadlands and left her to freeze. The snow kept falling. Her last memory before darkness crept in was a voice, hers, whispering through cracked lips. I never had a warm bed, never felt safe, not even once. Hours passed, maybe days. Time didn't exist in the cold. Then dash crunch. Footsteps. Heavy, steady, human. He moved like someone used to danger. A long coat covered his body, fur-lined and patched up with old fabric. His boots cracked the ice beneath him. His name was Connor, and he wasn't looking for her. He was just scavenging. A broken drone crash had been reported in this region. When his scanner pinned organic life, he didn't ignore it. He found her barely covered by the snow. She looked small, weak, alien, but she was still alive. Connor stared at her for a long moment. Her kind had attacked human colonies before. They were fast, smart, and dangerous. But this one? She looked like a dying child wrapped in frost. He knelt beside her. Damn, he muttered. What the hell did they do to you? She didn't answer. With a grunt, he pulled off his gloves and checked her pulse. It was weak. Her skin was ice cold. He had two options: walk away or carry a stranger into his shelter. He sighed. Guess I'm not built to leave people behind. The wind hit hard as he lifted her. She was light, almost too light. Connor wrapped her in his coat and headed toward his hideout, a half-buried escape pod built into a rocky cliff. Inside, it was tight but warm. A heater hummed in the corner. Rations and tools were stacked in crates. A small bed sat in the middle. Connor placed her on it, careful not to touch her skin too long. He didn't know how her biology worked, and he didn't care to find out the hard way. He covered her in thermal blankets, turned up the heat, and stood back. Don't die on me, he said. I hate wasting supplies. Hours later, her eyes opened. She blinked at the soft light above her. Her body still ached. Her chest burned with cold air, but she wasn't outside. She was warm. And there was a smell. Something sharp and human. Fire, metal, soap. She sat up too fast. Whoa, easy there, a voice said. Lyra turned. The human stood across the room, arms crossed, eyes watching. You're awake, he said. Good. Thought I was going to have to bury you. She tried to speak but coughed. Instead, water's by the bed, he added, pointing. Lyra reached out with trembling fingers and took a sip. The warmth shocked her system. She almost cried. Why? She started, her voice raspy. Why did you help me? Connor raised an eyebrow. Was I supposed to let you die? Yes, she said without thinking. That's what everyone else did. A silence fell. Then Connor walked closer slowly. I'm not everyone else, he said. He placed something on the table. A piece of bread. Warm, soft, fresh. She looked at it like it was a weapon. You're safe here. For now, Connor said. I'm not your enemy. But I don't trust easily. She nodded. Her eyes scanned the room. There was a knife on his belt, a pistol on the wall, one bed. One human. One chance. What's your name? She asked. Connor. I'm Lyra. He nodded. Double quotes. Well, Lyra, he said. You can sleep here tonight. Just don't stab me in my sleep. She gave a small, broken laugh. The first one in years. I don't even have the strength to move. she whispered. Good, Connor said with a smirk, sitting by the wall. Then maybe I'll sleep easy. Lyra curled under the blanket and closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But for now, the bed was warm, and someone had chosen to save her. Cliffhanger ending. As she drifted to sleep, she felt a sudden jolt, an old distress beacon, deep under the pod activated by accident. A blinking red light appeared on the screen behind Connor. Her tribe might already be coming. And not to take her back alive. 3 days. That's how long she'd been inside the human shelter. Lyra should have run by now. Instead, she was sweeping the floor, not because he asked, but because something about this tiny, warm space made her want to feel useful. She had never lived in a place like this. The walls were metal, rusty in corners, and the air smelled like old circuits and firewood, but it was safe. And safety was a new feeling, but peace never lasted long for someone like her, because outside, someone was watching. Earlier that day, Connor tossed her a black shirt. It was human-sized, way too big for her, but she caught it without flinching. You keep walking around in that torn alien jumpsuit. I'm gonna start charging you rent, he said with a smirk. She frowned. What's rent, exactly? She slipped the shirt on. It hung past her knees. When she looked up, Connor was already tinkering with a busted drone on the table. You used to be a soldier, she said. He didn't answer right away. You watch how I walk? He asked. Double quotes. No. I saw the scar on your back when you turned. Connor went quiet. Lyra waited. Finally he said, yeah, I fought in the Zarin Wars. Lost friends, gained enemies. Got tired of both. She nodded slowly. My people fought in those wars too. I didn't. I figured, he replied. You don't carry yourself like a killer. I was supposed to learn, she whispered. I refused. Connor looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. That's why they left you in the snow? She gave a small nod. Cold bastards, he muttered. They are warm-blooded, she said flatly. Connor burst into a short laugh. All right, you've got a sense of humor. That's something. Later, while Lyra organized the corner of the core Ingle room, she noticed something strange. The screen on the wall, one she hadn't touched, was blinking red again. Connor? She said. Is that normal? He turned and frowned, walked over. Tapped the panel. Damn it, he muttered. This thing's been spitting out interference signals since I found it. What does it mean? It means if anyone's listening on old military channels, they just got a ping from this location. Her heart stopped. My people might come, she said, but not to save me. Connor grabbed his jacket. Then we get ready. First rule of warmth, never let your guard down. That night, the shelter felt tighter than before. Lyra sat by the small heat vent, knees pulled to her chest. She looked at Connor's cot, and then back at him. He was working again, soldering some wires together with his back to her. Connor? She said. Yeah? Do you sleep with one eye open? He looked over his shoulder. Sometimes. Depends who's in the room. She stood slowly and walked toward the cot. I've never shared a bed, she whispered. Not even as a child. Warmth was for the strong only. Connor put down the tools. And now? I'm tired of being cold, she said. There was no seduction in her voice. No game, just truth. Connor didn't move. But he did say one thing. Then don't betray me. That's rule 2. She climbed into the cot beside him, slowly, and faced the wall. I won't, she said. And for the first time in her life, she slept through the night. Outside, on a far hill, a hunter drone activated. It had found a matching energy signature for a lost scout. Female, non-combatant, disobedient. Target was alive. And not alone. The tribe would be notified. She had broken their law by surviving. Now she had broken a worse law, sleeping in a human's bed. Cliffhanger ending. Back inside, Connor suddenly woke up. The shelter's motion sensor blinked. Something was just outside, and it wasn't friendly. He woke up to silence. No wind, no clicking vents, no hum from the old heater. Connor opened his eyes slowly and froze. There was someone in his bed, but it wasn't an enemy. It was her Lyra. She was curled up beside him, arms tight around herself, her small body trembling under the blanket. Her silver-blue skin glowed faintly in the dark. Her eyes were closed, but her breathing was fast, shallow. Scared. Connor blinked, confused, then remembered. Power had cut off an hour ago. Heat was gone. The inside of the shelter had dropped fast. He hadn't noticed. But she had. She'd climbed into his bed without asking. No noise. No warning, just cold fear. Earlier that night, Connor had warned her. "If you're going to stay here, respect boundaries," he said. She nodded once and said nothing. He'd gone to sleep with a pistol under his pillow. Now she was beside him. Unarmed, scared. He whispered, "Lyra?" She opened her eyes. She didn't move, just looked at him, guilty, unsure. "I didn't mean to break your rules," she said quietly. Her voice caught. "I got cold." Connor stayed still. "No one ever let you sleep next to them?" he asked. She shook her head. "I was taught closeness is weakness. Even family sleeps apart. Meds were earned with blood." Connor exhaled slowly. "Damn," she whispered. "I don't want to go back to sleeping like I don't matter." That hit him deep. He leaned back, eyes on the ceiling. "I'm not good at this," he said. "At what?" "Letting people close." Lyra shifted, laying on her side, face half buried in the blanket. Her voice was small. "You let me in the bed. Technically, you let yourself in." She smiled faintly. Then silence, but not the bad kind. Until cracked. Both of them sat up. Something hit the outer hatch. Connor rolled out of bed fast, grabbed his weapon. "Stay down," he ordered. Lyra didn't argue. She slid off the mattress and ducked behind the metal crate near the wall. Her fingers trembled again, but not from cold this time. Fear, guilt. They had found her. She knew it. Connor checked the motion sensor. A red dot blinked slowly just outside the perimeter. "Just one signal," he said. "Could be a scav drone. Could be worse." Lyra's heart pounded. "If it's my people," she said, "they won't knock." Connor nodded, eyes scanning the screen. "You've got 10 seconds, he said calmly. "If there's something you're not telling me, tell me now." She looked up at him from behind the crate. "I lied," she said. "I wasn't just a scout. I was one of their elite trackers. I helped find traitors. Until I became one." Connor clenched his jaw. "And now they're tracking you?" "Yes," she said. "But they kill slow. If they catch me, they'll make sure you suffer too." He didn't flinch. "Then we make sure they don't catch either of us." Connor moved like a soldier again. Fast, calm, focused. He powered up the generator just enough to trigger the false heat signature, an old trick to confuse enemy sensors. He tossed Lyra a small shock blade. "You ever used one of these?" She took it in both hands and nodded. "I'm not as soft as I look," she said. Connor gave a half smile. "I figured. You did sneak into my bed without me noticing." She smirked. "You snore like a beast." Outside, the snow cracked again. Then silence. Lyra crouched low, eyes locked on the hatch. Connor stood near the side window, rifle ready. Minutes passed. Nothing. Then a flash of light behind the ridge. They were being scanned. Suddenly, the red dot vanished. No movement. Connor frowned. "What the run?" Lyra whispered. "It's a cloaked hunter. It's inside range now." Connor aimed his rifle and backed up, but the hatch didn't open. No crash. No blast. Instead, a voice came through the old comm unit. Female, cold, alien. "Lyra of the Fourth Ring. You've shared a human's bed. You are no longer one of us." Lyra's face went pale. They know. She whispered. Connor stepped in front of her. Then they'll have to deal with both of us. Cliffhanger ending. The light cut out. The shelter went dark again. And something began crawling on the roof, slow, deliberate. Hunting. Connor raised his rifle. Lyra gripped the shock blade tighter. Tonight, warmth had a price. Asterisk. The roof creaked. Something heavy walked across it, slow and steady. Too light to be human. Too smooth to be random. It was hunting. Connor didn't speak. He crouched near the wall, weapon aimed up, breath quiet. His eyes met Lyra's. She was crouched behind a crate, fingers tight around the shock blade. This shelter won't hold if it comes through the roof, he whispered. Lyra didn't blink. Then we don't let it. 1 hour earlier, Connor had been outside, chopping wood. Not real wood, old floorboards from crashed escape pods, but it burned well enough. Inside, Lyra was boiling water, trying to learn how to cook using a battered human heating plate. Her fingers were still awkward with human tech, but she was learning. She had never had a home before, never touched real fire, never made anything warm for someone else. It felt important. When Connor came back inside, arms full of fuel, he stopped and sniffed the air. You cooking poison? She turned around. It's soup. He looked into the pot. That's not soup. That's an alien war crime. She held the ladle up proudly. It's hot, it counts. They both laughed. It was the first real laugh in days. Then the motion sensor blinked again. Now, they weren't laughing. They were being hunted. Connor leaned closer to the side panel of the shelter, where the metal had already begun to crack from cold and rust. They're testing us, he said. Seeing if we'll run. If we run, Lyra said quietly, they'll chase. That's how we were trained. Connor glanced at her. We? Lyra met his gaze. I told you I tracked traitors. I never said I wasn't good at it. He stared at her a moment longer, then nodded. You know what it is up there? Yes, she said. Hunter class 4, cloaked, can cling to walls. Thinks like a spider, fights like a soldier. It won't strike unless it's sure of the kill, so we fake the kill. She nodded. Bait it, trap it, burn it. Connor pointed to the firewood stack. I've got fuel. You've got fangs. Let's welcome our guest. They moved fast. Lyra stripped wires from the heater panel, coiling them into a snare. Connor rigged a backup battery to overload. They worked in sync, no questions. No arguing. Just quiet, tense understanding. It wasn't romantic, it was survival. And survival builds trust. Lyra whispered. When I was a child, they made us sleep on stone floors in winter. They said warmth was for warriors. Connor grunted. And now? She looked at the fire. Now I'm building traps with a human. Over stolen wood, in a junk shelter. I think I prefer this. Suddenly, slam, a sharp spike pierced the roof from above. It twisted, searching. Connor rolled out of the way, rifle raised. Lyra darted under the cot, knife drawn. Then came the voice again. This time distorted and sharp. You are marked. Human infection. Broken loyalty. Stand down and return. Connor scoffed. Is that their way of saying please come home? Lyra's eyes were glowing, now her pulse high. No, she said. That's their way of saying we're going to cut off your feet and drag you back by the neck. Charming. The trap was ready. They powered on the false heat signature, a decoy shaped like a sleeping body. A pile of blankets and gear sat in the center of the room, right under the cracked roof panel. Connor aimed from behind the crates. Lyra stood hidden, ready to trigger the shock blade. And then crashed out. The roof buckled, metal tore open, and the hunter dropped in. It was fast, four-legged, skin like oily glass. Its face had no eyes, just scanners. It saw heat. It lunged at the decoy. Too late. Boom. The shockwave hit. Battery explosion, overloaded coil, flashfire from dry wood. The thing screamed not with a mouth, but with static. Lyra leapt in, shock. Blade stabbing. Deep into its neck joint. It spasmed, twitched and fell still. Silence returned. Smoke filled the air. Lyra stood shaking. Covered in black sludge. Connor lowered his rifle and exhaled hard. "You okay?" he asked. "I stabbed it," she said. "Yeah, I saw." "No, I mean I didn't wait. I wanted to kill it. I wanted to." Connor walked over and picked up a wet towel. "You're allowed to want things," he said, handing it to her. "Especially when they want you dead." She wiped her face and stared at the bed. Her bed. His bed. "You'll let me stay again?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah, but next time, maybe not before sneaking into bed." She gave a tired smile. "What's Rule 3? Connor smirked. "Rule 3 is don't burn the damn soup." Cliffhanger ending. Outside the shelter, far across the snow. 3 more red lights blinked on. More hunters. And one tall figure watching them silently. Holding a command device. The tribe wasn't finished. She had never heard a human scream like that. Not in the training arenas. Not in the wars. Not even when her people tortured prisoners. But when Connor hit the ground, clutching his side, blood soaking his jacket, that sound tore through her. It didn't sound like pain. It sounded like betrayal. As if the world had stabbed him in the back. And maybe it had 10 minutes earlier. They were outside the shelter for the first time in days, collecting what was left of the destroyed hunter drone. It was cold. Quiet. Calm. Too calm. Connor carried his old pulse rifle over one shoulder, muttering about salvage parts and whether the alien tech would short-circuit in the snow. Lyra followed close behind, scanning the horizon. Her fingers gripped her shock blade. She trusted nothing, not the silence, not the wind, not the fake peace. Then the shot came. Not from the sky. From below. A trap. The ground burst open. Camouflaged snow caved into a pit lined with energy darts. One hit Connor in the ribs. He fell instantly. Now. Lyra dragged him back to the shelter. Breathing hard, boots slipping on the ice. His blood left a trail. "Don't sleep," she shouted. "Connor, look at me." He laughed, weak and bloody. "Is this your version of bedside care?" She choked. "Stop talking. Just saying. You're not great at encouragement." Inside the shelter, she dropped him onto the bed and ripped his jacket open. The dart had burned through his armor and left a searing wound. Human medkits weren't meant for this kind of damage, but Lyra didn't care. She grabbed everything she could: bandages, sealant foam, old nanogel. He hissed in pain. She growled back, "Don't be soft." Connor grinned through clenched teeth. "Look, who's calling who soft?" Hours passed. He drifted in and out of sleep. Lyra never left his side. She didn't eat. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe unless he did. At some point, he whispered, "Why, are you still here?" She leaned close and said, without blinking, "Because you stayed when I was nothing. Now you're something, and I'm not losing you." 3 days later, Connor was alive but barely. He couldn't walk, couldn't hold his rifle, and the red dots were getting closer. Lyra stood at the door, wearing his coat, holding his gun, too big for her, too heavy. She turned to look at him one last time before stepping out. "You trust me?" she asked. Connor gave a weak smile. "I trust the girl who used to hunt traitors." She nodded. "Good." Then she left. Outside, she set the traps the way he taught her. She aimed the gun the way he once did. And when the second hunter appeared, she didn't wait. She pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly knocked her off her feet. But the bolt hit. And for the first time in her life, she killed for someone else. Back inside, Connor stirred awake to the smell of smoke and something burnt. She sat beside him, wiping blood off her hands. Her face was calm, but her eyes were full of something new. "You left the heater too high," he said. "No," she replied softly. "I just burned a corpse." Oh, he blinked. So, how's your day going? She smiled. Then her voice dropped low. I'm scared, Connor. He blinked. You? Scared? She nodded. If they hurt you again, I don't know what I'll do. I'm not the same girl you found in the snow. He reached for her hand, weak but steady. I know, he said. You're stronger now. She looked down at their hands. I'm only strong when you're breathing. Cliffhanger ending. Outside, a transmission buzzed at an old frequency. A voice from her past. Lyra, we know you're listening. You're bleeding for a human, dying for him. But will he do the same for you? She stared at the speaker and whispered, he already did. Asterisk, she found another pillow. And she hated it. Not because it was dirty, not because it was torn, but because Connor smiled when he handed it to her and said, here, now you've got your own. That one sentence? It hit her harder than any weapon her people had ever designed. For nights now, they had slept side by side in the same bed. No words, no deals, no labels, just heat, silence, and trust. When he bled, she stayed. When she broke, he watched over her dot, and somewhere in that broken shelter, they became more than strangers. But now he was healing. Now he was walking again. Now he gave her a separate pillow, earlier that day. Connor stretched his arms for the first time in a week. Still sore, he muttered. Still dramatic. Lyra replied, arms crossed, watching him move around the shelter like he didn't. Almost die. You were a decent nurse, he teased. Just wish you didn't yell so much. I thought humans needed emotional pressure to heal, he chuckled. That's not pressure. That's alien nagging, she grinned. It worked. He nodded, rubbing his ribs. Thanks to you. And then he dropped the pillow in her lap. I figured you might want your own space now. Not like I'm gonna freeze to death anymore. She looked down at the pillow. Soft, clean, smelled like him. She didn't smile. That night, she didn't get into his bed. She laid on the floor instead. Blanket pulled tight. Eyes open. Mind racing. Connor looked down at her from the cot. You're really gonna sleep down there? Yes. Because of a pillow? She didn't answer. He sighed. Aliens. She whispered under her breath. Humans are worse. They give you warmth, then take it away like it's a gift with a time limit. In the morning, she was gone. Not far, just outside the shelter, standing in the cold wind, watching the sky. Her tail flicked in frustration. Her breath came out in short clouds. Connor joined her, coat draped over his shoulders. You mad at me? No. Jealous? She turned. Of what? I don't know, he said casually. Maybe of the extra space in the bed. She looked away. I'm not used to being sent away after closeness. Connor leaned against the doorframe. I wasn't pushing you away. I was trying to give you comfort. I don't want comfort, she said. Sharply, I want the choice to stay next to you. The words stunned them both. Then came the sound, not from the sky. Not from the snow. From the ridge. A voice, mechanical, cold, and strangely familiar to her. Unit 6F Lyra. You've been marked for mercy cleansing. We offer you one last deal. Surrender the human, return with us, and you may keep your name. Connor reached for his weapon. Lyra didn't flinch. Her voice turned to steel. Tell them, she said. They can keep my name. I've already picked a new one. Connor raised a brow. You did? She looked at him and whispered, if you'll have me, I'd take yours. Connor blinked. You're serious? Deadly. Then she smiled. And if anyone else tries to crawl into that bed, I'll bite their face off. Later that night, she laid back beside him again. No more second pillow. No more gap between them. Just warmth. Again. He turned to her. You don't have to fight for space here. I'm not fighting for space, she said softly. I'm fighting for you. Cliffhanger ending. Far above them, a larger vessel entered orbit, cloaked, armed, and waiting. The final command had been given. If she didn't return by morning, they would burn everything. At dawn, she stood by the hatch, holding a gun that wasn't hers, in a home that wasn't hers, and wondering if she still belonged. The human she'd grown to care for, maybe, even love, was still asleep behind her. And in the sky above, her people waited. They weren't bluffing anymore. This wasn't a warning. It was a countdown, and Lyra knew how her kind kept time. When the sun touched the ridge, everything below would burn, unless she returned alone 1 hour earlier. She had woken early before Connor, sat beside him in bed, watched the slow rhythm of his breathing, the way his hand twitched in sleep. How peaceful he looked, like a man who'd finally found rest. She wanted to memorize that look, because she might not see it again. Her old rank had sent one last message directly to her implant, the one buried deep in her skull, the one she couldn't remove. The message was clear: return by sunrise. The human lives refuse, and we erase the site. It wasn't a bluff. She'd seen them do it before. To villages, to traders, to friends. She left the bed quietly, picked up the gun he fixed for her, and walked outside. The cold bit at her skin, but she didn't flinch. Her body was numb, her mind sharper than ever. She looked up. The stars were gone now, hidden behind a massive dark shape, a ship, cloaked to most scanners, not to her eyes. She knew every line of that ship, knew where the engines were, knew where the missiles were stored, knew the exact room where her old commander sat, waiting for her return. All she had to do was walk away, leave the shelter, let Connor sleep, and everything would stay quiet. But she didn't move, not until she heard his voice behind her. You going somewhere? She turned slowly. Connor stood barefoot in the snow, jacket half zipped, hair a mess. He was holding her pillow. Didn't think you'd leave without this, he said. Lyra stared at him, then down at the pillow, then back at him, and she broke. I wasn't going to leave, she whispered, her voice cracking. I was going to save you. He stepped closer. You were going to sacrifice yourself. I thought I had to. Connor looked at the sky. They're up there, huh? Yes. They'll kill you if you go back. They'll kill you if I don't. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something simple. I'd rather die in this bed with you than live alone in it. Lyra couldn't speak, couldn't move. She just stared like his words were fire, and she was frozen. Solid. Then finally, she laughed. A real, painful, joyful laugh. You really are the dumbest species in the galaxy. He stepped closer. And you're the most stubborn. She pressed her forehead to his. They'll strike when the sun hits that rock, she said. We have minutes. Then let's make them regret it. Together, they ran inside. She uploaded false codes into her old signal, triggering a fake surrender beacon. Something her people would expect. Connor wired up every leftover power cell and scrap weapon he had stacked at the outer ridge, wired to overload. Lyra rigged her implant just before removing it from her skull with shaking fingers. Pain screamed through her head. Worth it, she said. Blood dripping down her neck. He caught her before she fell. Still got one bed, he said. Then I'm not going anywhere, she mumbled. Seconds before sunrise, the warship scanned the area, confirmed the beacon. And opened its lower ramp to extract her. But what it didn't detect was the chain of fire underneath. Boom! The explosion lit the entire ridge. Blinding wave of fire climbed up toward the ship's underbelly. The ship swerved, too late. Its side engine caught the blast. The ship spun, lost control, veered off, and vanished behind the far mountains. Billowing smoke. Silence followed. Then only birds and wind, and the scent of burned metal. Inside the shelter, Connor laid her down gently in the bed. Her eyes were fluttering. She was alive, Barely. He sat beside her. "You're home now," he said. She smiled weakly. "Still only one bed?" "Still only one bed." "Good," she whispered. "I'm not sharing you with anyone." He smirked. "Even if they're cuter?" She narrowed her eyes. "I have fangs." "You want to test me?" Connor laughed. And for the first time since Earth fell silent, he felt like a man who had everything. Final scene, soft outro voiceover style for YouTube. She never had a warm bed until a human gave her his. She never had a reason to stay until someone wanted her to. And in that cold, dead world, something new was born. Not just love, but a future worth fighting for.